Hello, boys and girls. Miss Cross is here with you for science today, and we have been working all week on designing a scenario to demonstrate the effect of a change on an ecosystem. And we have been working on the learning targets of I can identify common changes that impact an ecosystem, I can identify living and non-living factors that are impacted by a change, and I can explain the effects of that change on living and non-living things in that ecosystem. And you're going to have a chance today to show us what you have learned about all of this week. So we're going to look at several different ecosystems today. You're then going to consider which ecosystems would be affected by several different scenarios that could occur there. And as we look at each ecosystem, here are some things we need to keep in mind. We're going to be looking to see how the different food webs are similar and how they're different. We're going to notice if different food webs may have more producers or more consumers than another one. And also, how do the climates in the ecosystems differ? And climate is something we're going to be learning about in a few months, maybe, down the road a little bit in 4th grade. But climate is the typical temperature and weather patterns in an area. So like in Georgia, our summers are hot and our winters are mild. Whereas if you had a desert climate, it might be more hot all the time, or an Arctic climate might be more cold all the time. So we're also going to keep in mind that different food webs in different ecosystems can be affected differently by the same type of change. So for example, a flood might affect the flow of energy in a forest ecosystem differently than it would in a pond ecosystem, okay? So today we're going to investigate all of this further. So let's start looking at some food webs. So here is a forest ecosystem. And if we look in the forest ecosystem, I see 4 different types of producers: corn, a flowering plant, lavenders, and mangoes. And then I see energy beginning to flow through the food web through different levels of consumers, okay? And I see some insects, I see a frog, a rat, a thrush, which is a bird, I see a wolf, an eagle, and a python. Now keep in mind that you can trace individual food chains by following arrows. So for instance, if we start with the flowering plant, we can see that it could be eaten by a butterfly. That butterfly could be then eaten by a frog. That frog could then be eaten by an eagle or a python. Okay, so there's many food chains in this food web. Now, after we look at these, you're going to be able to go back through the slides because you're going to need to study them a little bit more closely as you do your work today. Okay, now we're going to look at a desert ecosystem. And if you look at this one, it looks a little different, so you've got to study it carefully, but you see a creosote bush in the bottom left-hand corner and a beaver tail cactus in the right-hand corner. Those are our producers. I also see a decomposer in this one, a mushroom. I also see a microfungus, which is another decomposer. So let's look at a different a food chain here. So if I start with a creosote bush in the bottom left-hand corner, I can see that it might be eaten by a desert iguana. That iguana might be eaten by a kit fox. I could also see the desert wood rat eats the creosote bush, and it could be eaten by a raven or a rattlesnake or a red-tailed hawk. Okay, so lots of different food chains to study within this food web. Let's look at a pond ecosystem now. All right, now we see a human. I think that's the first one we've seen a human in today. I see phytoplankton as my producer, and everything is getting energy beginning with that producer. We have trout, dragonfly, mayfly, frog, salamander, bald eagle, the human, and a snake. Now we see an ocean ecosystem, okay? And I see, again, phytoplankton. I see zooplankton as well as seaweed. Those are the producers. I see a crab, a squid, a krill, a fish, a seagull, a leopard seal, a blue whale, a penguin, an elephant seal, and a killer whale. And one example of a food chain we could trace would be starting with the seaweed, which gets eaten by the crab, which gets eaten by the squid, which then could be eaten by a penguin or an elephant seal. Let's say it got eaten by the elephant seal. The elephant seal could then get eaten by the killer whale. Okay, so let me explain to you what your job is going to be today. You're going to have an independent practice sheet, and I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. And you're going to consider which ecosystem would be most affected and least affected by several different changes. Now, it is very important that you think this through. You're going to need to go back and look over the pictures of the ecosystems, and you have to tell your teacher why you chose what you chose. And let me show you what this is going to look like. So this is your sheet you're going to have, and your teacher can have you download it, print it out. It could be in Google Docs. You could type right in it and share it with them that way. However they choose to have you turn it in. But this is an example. So it says this one or that. That's the title of it. So let's just look at drought for a minute, which is on the left. So this column is for drought. So you're going to have to pick which ecosystem you think would be least affected by a drought. So if rain stopped falling for an extended period of time, which ecosystem would be least affected and which would be most affected? And you're going to have to defend your answer. Now, there are multiple correct answers here, and really if you defend your answer well, chances are you're going to get it correct, because there are different things that could be affected in different ways. Now, in addition to drought, you're going to consider pollution. So which ecosystem would be the least affected by pollution? Which would be the most affected? And again, defend your answer means give us details as to why you selected that ecosystem. Now you're going to have another page down here which has two more possibilities. We have construction and we have a flood. So again, which ecosystem would be least affected and most affected by construction and by a flood? Okay, boys and girls, you should have your slides available on your eClass page, as well as this worksheet and video, so you can rewatch and study as you do your work. So, good luck. I hope you have a great time doing your science. Please ask for help if you need it, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye, friends.